Oh, okay. So I hope you like the snazzy hook. Unfortunately, if you're hoping for a guide to vibe coding, some kind of tutorial on that, you will be sorely disappointed tonight. The vibes are not here. So, AI is a complex topic in an ever-evolving field, and I'm going to try something a little different with this. There's an incredible amount of good information out there from sources like IBM Technologies' YouTube channel that covers a lot of the AI basics and accessible details. Rather than regurgitating a lot of the technical details already accessible, I'm going to spend more time trying to layer some metaphors to paint a broader picture. It has been a while since I've done a presentation like this, so just bear with me and we'll get through it together. So, who am I? My name is Gemma. I'm a parent to 6 kids. I've got 3 biological and 3 bonus from my first marriage, although calling them kids isn't accurate because my 2 oldest are 18 and 19 now. I can promise I've earned all the gray hairs, even if you can't see them, the ones I'm regrowing. Anywho, I am a software architect with 20-something years experience who's also spent some time studying psychology and English, which turns out to matter a lot more when you're working with AI and tribal knowledge, but more on that later. Last year was my first year back in the field after stepping away for a hiatus, and I spent it deep in the AI trenches. And oh boy, was it raining AI cats and dogs. Whew. So, I grew up in a hand-me-down house. I was fortunate enough to have a dad who worked as an early engineer for a Midwest industrial manufacturing company. Small IT team, holding everything together. Coupling this career with his hobby meant that there was always leftovers, hand-me-downs or slightly defective parts. I learned how to quickly make do with what I had, how to keep my legacy hardware running, and my operating system stable on unstable hardware. My journey learning software development wasn't much different. Socioeconomics priced me out of most mainstream tooling, but freeware and the occasional donated license copy meant I had tools to explore. Exploration-based learning, in hindsight, made a lot more sense given that I did and didn't have access to. A good tool, specifically a good beginner's tool, will be self-explanatory. It's an incredible way to start learning. I remember my dad questioning my code, though. How did I do that? How did I know what I was copying? Did I understand why it worked the way it did? Those questions my dad asked me served me well. I didn't just copy the code samples I found, I studied them. I plugged them in, I ran them, I evaluated them, I studied them, modified, reran, reevaluated. I often worked well past proof of concepts because it wasn't enough just to prove it, I wanted to bend it, flex it, stress it, break it, see what I could make it do. I wanted to understand why every line of code I put in did what it did, what it meant, and what I could make it do. Now, in the early days of the industry, before the modern internet existed, I followed in the footsteps of many an old school engineer and learned the old-fashioned way, with a book and a manual. These are not the originals. Yes, I had copies of these back in the day. No, I don't have them anymore, but that's what I had available. I will always be an advocate for higher education, but never underestimate the impact of picking up a book. Besides, there's nothing like wading through the sledges of another engineer's jargon, and it turns out to be a great way to start learning the minds of your peers. 24/7 internet access connections and later mobile internet evolved this entire process. This is a great way to discover new concepts and tools. A good tool, like a good concept, gets talked about. A good tool ends up with a fan base all on its own. The more I was able to be a part of the discussion happening around my code samples, around the tooling and concepts I was learning, and around the work that we ultimately produce with it, the more I understood what was going on. Like, I know it sounds cliche, like experience teaches, you understand it by learning it, but it's true. You don't learn it without experiencing it in some way. In fact, I think most quality engineers are like any good science-based professionals. They end up having to learn to discipline their focus in the areas which they're learning because there is so much to learn, and they end up developing such a hunger for it. For me to end up being able to overcome momentary biases and stop wasting my time learning useless tools just because someone got me with a hook, I learned to start pre-vetting my tools before even looking at them. Price points, availability, market dominance, open source alternatives, but mostly, I wouldn't even look at it unless it crossed my radar more than once and from more than one direction. So, it is not easy keeping up in an industry like this. But this is what separates coders from engineers. It's not about learning secret handshakes of tribal knowledge. It's about learning the wisdom from that tribal knowledge. We are only capable of seeing as far as we are because we stand on the shoulders of those that came before us. I'm sure some of you are catching on to why I'm talking about all this, but don't get ahead of me. So, why tribal knowledge? Why are we talking about learning? Well, because that's what the business of engineers is. Information technology, the technology of tribal knowledge. All information is tribal knowledge, and we are in the business of building, maintaining those systems of information. Our work collects, maintains, and transforms the information of our users. Our work is just information too. The code we write and maintain, the features we design and develop, the bugs brought to our attention that we document and dispose of, it's all just information. And AI doesn't change that, but it can evolve how we do it. So, AI, what is it? I am a fan of Professor Harari's alien intelligence definition. Its experiences of reality are completely alien to us, yet it is a form of probabilistic intelligence that, as he says, is capable of making decisions and generating ideas for itself. Now, he's a history professor and philosopher. Those are his realms to be thinking about. I'm an engineer. My realm is the digital, the place where AI's presence is most tangibly felt, the place where we have replicated an abstraction of our reality that it can interact with. And for those purposes, I prefer to think of it like, well, I replace the I in AI and I drop it to a B there at most, and for barely intelligence. At best, it is humanity's patterns without the wisdom that comes from experience. It's our biology that tempers our cognition. We don't just know it, we feel it, and we remember both. Without those, AI is just an expensive copy without the depth. So, we have, however, found a way to use that expensive copy, but it can be like letting a toddler loose in the workshop with the power tools for all the grace it has. AI is not much different than our own brains, neurological pattern recognition. Everything is weighted probabilities. It has no direct access to the outside world, and it can only predict based on its context and its training history. Its stateless existence means that it is incapable of experiencing the long-term consequences of existence. Experiences like growing up, falling in love, having your heart broken, pain and trauma, those are abstract concepts to it. The only thing it remembers after a session is the artifacts it left behind. We did do a good job modeling it after us, though. I mean, we replicated our patterns right down to our cognitive biases. I think a lot of you have probably seen this in your day-to-day jobs, trying to work with it. It's often overconfident, will regularly fail to challenge its own assumption. Its risk aversion shows up all the time in over-engineering of edge cases. It over-prioritizes new patterns, and it prioritizes speed and efficiency over perfect accuracy the same way humans do, as a saving shortcut for energy that can often result in hallucinating reality. All of this makes AI tooling fundamentally different from our traditional tooling. For the first time in our careers, our tooling is no longer deterministic in its outputs. Traditional tooling, like traditional coding, is deterministic. Same input, same output, every time. It can be predicted, and it can be replicated. AI, on the other hand, is probabilistic. Same input, maybe similar output. It can give us completely varying outputs depending on a whole host of conditions and can only usually be replicated. There are more nuances here we could tangent on, but for the sake of brevity, we will leave it at that. Old school tools did what they were told. New school tools will sometimes sass back. This probabilistic nature means that we cannot predict an exact outcome. So as engineers, how are we supposed to put this overly eager, easily overwhelmed junior developer with memory problems whose code quality is all over the place to good use? Well, you remember that toddler we let loose in the workshop with the power tools? His name is AI, and for better or for worse, they got the job, and we've been told no one else is showing up. And that probably means we're going to have to think really critically about how we put it to work. I have shamelessly stolen this slide from a metaphor from Dex Horthy over at Human Layer from a presentation at AI Engineer Conference last June. I'll link the YouTube video at the end. If you're not familiar with the movie, it's obviously called Memento. It's a movie about a man who suffers from a form of amnesia, resulting in short-term memory loss and the inability to form new memories. He has to use an elaborate system of photographs, handwritten notes, and tattoos in an attempt to uncover the perpetrator who killed his wife and caused him to sustain the condition. Gross oversimplification, but it's been a while since I've watched it. But every session working with AI is like this. Every day is a reset. There is no real new memory. All new experiences post-training do not exist in any meaningful way other than the artifacts you have created along the way. So, what does critically thinking look like? Working with a biased, probabilistic, stateless tool even look like? Well, first it's important to understand that how you work with AI will look different depending on what you do. This is not a bug, this is a feature. As an architect, I am doing the strategic thinking. AI is adding validated information to expand my context. As an engineer, I am defining the patterns, and AI is only replicating them under strict supervision. When I am doing any form of technical writing, I do the drafting. AI is only reminding me of my literary analysis criticisms and challenging my assumptions. I know an artist who uses visual models for constructive criticisms to grow his sketching. Do you see the patterns yet? Humans still doing the critical creative work, AI is just providing the assist. And the amount of experience you have will change how you work with it. Some research seems to back up this role-based focus as well. At Columbia Business School, a study showed that when a company adopts an employee-centric approach, meaning that employees are trusted to manage their own workflows and empowered to make decisions about how they work, the company is 7 times more likely to reach AI maturity. That's what we're talking about here tonight, finding your patterns for your role. So, what's my strategy? How does this work in practice for me? Well, I'm going to focus on 3 different lanes today that are, in my opinion, some of the lowest hanging fruit that you're going to need to have an understanding of if you want to be taken seriously working with this technology. I would be looking for these core AI competency skills in any engineer that I was interviewing. So, what are these lanes? Well, you'd think it'd be research, replication, validation. That's the smart way to do it, but I did it all backwards. So we're going to do replication, then research, then validation. So, replication. So I want to tell you about my first experiences trying to vibe code a project from scratch. Whatever AI could do, it was gonna do it. I gave it a prompt and sat behind the wheel. Do you see my eye twitching yet? I was working on a simple little side project, never meant to be published. I knew whatever I did, I needed to be able to at least replicate it. Turns out there's a big difference between AI helping and AI manages the whole damn thing. Turned out a little something like that. I'm sure you've heard of the bull in the shop. Well, this was like trying to use a bulldozer to operate the tools in my shop, constantly leaving markdown documents everywhere, architectural decisions constantly ignored, regularly hallucinated task completion, and wasted time on impractical edge cases. The front may have looked nice, but the back was usually propped up. This was nothing but replication without understanding. It wasn't comprehending the project, it was just regurgitating patterns based on patterns I gave it. Well, it turns out working on vibes alone is a little bit more frustrating when you're working with something that keeps making a mess. I realized it wasn't just my AI either, it was my tooling setup. I was using something clunky that ran on Markdown docs. It was a pain to make any kind of micro adjustments to all of my control points. Enter for me OpenCode, a better tool, one that runs on more settings like JSON structure, and I could plan around prompting more efficiently and give per agent granular access to MCPs and each of their tools. All of this gave me much better control behind that wheel. Before I knew it, I had roughed in a project that more or less worked. It was like 80-20, but the wrong 20. It had none of the pretty, it wasn't the pretty framing stuff that it missed. It was like core concepts, the actual functions that were supposed to do something. an integration point that got missed, the stuff that actually mattered. But I could work with it. That was a failure of planning and validation. I mean, the project was still a disaster. I ended up mothballing it. The training exercise was over, but it felt like progress. I just had to do a better job defining what patterns it was replicating. That means I gotta know my patterns first. So, what does research look like? Hopping lanes back to the work I was doing during my day job. I had a nice big brownfield monolithic of a project in front of me that I was working on, several dependencies, utility projects attached, things like that. Agentic first. Those were the orders from on high. Well, I knew I wasn't going to pull it off if my research wasn't sound. At least I could make a local mess all I wanted and reset. But once again, I was vibing with no structure, just my tools and my prompting. Stressful shit. I'd figured out how to control the bulldozer, but controlling it isn't precision. And this was missing things, details in the patterns, and missing important facts. Yeah, I could spec out an API integration update across the board, but it'd miss entire integration points, catching everything relevant in C#, but then missing the JavaScript implementation. I could keep prompting around this and chasing my tail, but at the end of the day, my research was not equating to clean planning or clean execution. So I did what I should have done from the start, which is what I ran straight into while looking for solutions to this very issue. I'm sure some of you have already guessed it. Spec-driven development. That's all it is. Look at that, old-fashioned, well-worn pattern saving the day. Separating the research from the work. Separating the exploration from the crafting. A good research interface like Cherry Studio for me was a must. Its built-in RAG system for chunking and transforming documents into vector embeddings is priceless for maintaining my patterns around how I plan and organize my projects. For those unfamiliar, vector embeddings, the language, if you will, that AI can mathematically operate on. MCPs to software platforms like my project management suite ensured that whatever bit or byte of research I was doing was being properly captured in whatever form was proper for the work. For bigger projects with team needs, this is where your RAG pipelines come in. It's not about building a RAG system with all of your company's data. It's about giving targeted context to an LLM that needs to be updated with some kind of regularity. These RAG systems won't replace document reading in your code loops, but they will provide high-level insight and pattern matching. Now, it felt like I was starting to cook finally. Tasks were at least getting complete. I was putting features in front of customers to review and validate. I'd figured out how to control the bulldozer, and now without leaving as much of a mess behind. But I hadn't shored up my validation yet. So validation. Third time's the charm, right? By this point in the year, I had a whole new workbench, unlike anything I'd ever used before. I was exploring and integrating new tech. I had clear direction in mind, but my validation was still not up to snuff. Rookie mistakes happen when you rely too heavily on AI. By late in the year, I'd gone through a whole cycle of research and functionality knockouts to finish building out a new feature set. There was still some chasing my tail moments, but in general, any time that happened, my tooling got tweaked, my documentation updated, or the way I thought about AI refined. I was still manually validating feature functions and pushing them to our customer's QA collaborator, but the work was progressing. Success? Well, I'd done a bunch of wrap up and polish, gone over the code base over and over again, and that bulldozer was now skimming nice, thin, clean layers right off the top. It was cleaning up older messes, strengthening the new code. I kept an eye out for unnecessary use cases and leftover slop, code comments during debugging, abandoned if statements, just cleaning and polishing anything that looked rough. Kind of going for something like that, but well, the customer signed off on their QA. I signed off on mine. We scheduled shipping. And the night before release, I was swimming through the project, feeling a little anxious, trying to reassure myself that I'd looked at every which way possible. When my LLM goes, oops. What do you mean, oops? What is oops? I'd managed to miss the growing controller size. Somewhere along the way, we'd missed offloading creeping business logic from a controller into a service, and now I had a monolithic controller and it was shipping either way. Plain and simple, it came down to a validation failure. It's not like it was the end of the world, but it had bad practices. It's something I knew but didn't catch. AI could have caught it, someone up the line could have caught it. Either way, I needed to be able to catch it. In reflection, this could have easily been mitigated by automating more of my mundane validation so I wasn't burning myself out before spotting the bigger patterns. This was important tribal knowledge that just got missed in the process. I should have been stress testing my architecture, not just polishing the surface. Gotta bend it, flex it, stress it till it's broke. In the end, it shipped. Post-launch test came back green. I put in a spec sheet for a change to correct the oversight. If you have seen further, it's by standing on the shoulders of giants. That was Newton. We can't just validate our results by ourselves, to ourselves, with only AI to supervise. Our research cannot exist in our minds and in the probabilistic statements of our LLMs. What we create cannot be limited to only what we can replicate. Otherwise, we lose innovation. These things have to be done in collaboration. AI isn't the giants. We are. The engineers standing on the shoulders of each other's greatness. If you are not intentionally working with your AI in this way, you could set yourself up for that world. Replication without innovation. Ideas that only exist in your head and in an echo chamber telling you you are right the entire time. So, after all that, why the heck a forging metaphor for the hook? Well, I'm using it to paint a picture of what these processes could look like at scale. The labor and craftsmanship that goes into creating something as simple as a small woodsman's axe head is incredible. Repeated processes of heating, shaping, and cooling just to rough in a simple, durable metal shape. It's a process as old as humanity's use of metal, being replicated at its basic components. Human ingenuity mixed with good old-fashioned human force. Now I'm going to play something that shows the modern equivalent. This is a solid billet of metal that is being worked and shaped in real time.
Wow. No way!
This is not a factory producing
just
something.
Those ears right down.
This is a master craftsman
Oh,
performing his art.
Moving so quickly. It's butter.
He's just working his materials.
Trimmed the end. You just kicked on the induction heater for the next half hour, right?
Yes?
While you're working.
Yeah.
One of my favorites. What you saw in that video is called an electric eccentric press. And the masters of that machinery are the fine folks over at Grandsforsbruk in Sweden. And the gentleman offering the commentary in the video background and the producer of these videos and screenshots is YouTuber Alec Steele. This is open die forging at an industrial scale. A blacksmith moving, shaping, and forming a raw block of metal, using clean lanes and channels at every step of the creation process to shape, form, and process his materials. It's not perfect. Parts still go through QA, and any number of factors can cause a rejection. But there is no shortage of professional quality craftsmanship involved either. This is not an automated factory. This is a modern workshop running at optimal efficiency. This is what makes the quality at scale, stripping out the unnecessary, menial, while keeping the artist engaged and in complete creative control. There can be artistry in engineering. The research we gather shapes and forms the products that we're then asked to replicate with clean lanes and patterns. We validate that product by validating the research, the replication, and the patterns. The validation we cannot be forgetting to ground outside of ourselves and our tooling. At Brook, axe production is based on 5 fundamental theses. This is taken straight from their website's production page, linked in the reference. An axe is only as good as the accumulated skills of the people who forge, grind, and attach the handle to the axe. Smarter production requires fewer natural resources. Every unnecessary step in axe production should be stripped out. We have ultimate responsibility for total quality. And lastly, sound knowledge of a product will increase its life and value. These principles aren't even anything new. It's all based on sound concepts. Create collectively, create ethically, create efficiently, create responsibly, and create with the desire to elevate. So, in summary, for me, this is the wrong approach, and I see a lot of people out there trying to do this, to replicate themselves in some way. If I can teach AI to do everything that I do, it'll do my job for me. Well, guys, that doesn't look a lot different than that to me. That's just work that doesn't need me anymore. What good is an engineer to that system? Anybody can go hit the start button on that factory. If all you're doing is replicating yourself, you're building a factory to crank out more of you for better or worse. If, however, we work with it like this, where AI is challenging us and our work, that's collaborative. Now you're multiplying your impact by challenging what you both bring to the table. Empowered, informed decision-making can elevate all of your work. Just remember that it might be wrong, and if you approach it as though you might be wrong, that's where the growth opportunities will appear. So challenge yourself. If you're doing it right, if you're challenging yourself, you can learn from this too. It is not hard if you're willing to think critically about it. You just have to be willing to be wrong and not let your ego get in the way. Here's the thing, AI doesn't have an ego. It does not mind being wrong. In fact, it'll happily agree with you, even when you're wrong. It's biased towards validation. That's why it's so important to never stop engaging in the critical thinking of learning. Without it, you can only ever be as good as your best model. Quick litmus test, if you're working with AI correctly or not. It's a simple question. If tokens skyrocketed tomorrow, how screwed would your workflow be? For me? Well, I'm just automating a bunch of the busy work. I didn't automate any of the critical thinking. I'm still doing all the creative work. It might take me a little bit longer to get from here to there, but my workbench stayed clean and my tools are all put away. I didn't have AI reinvent anything. I just elevated my own processes. I'm still the artisan working my craft. Some of my tooling just has a little bit more sass now. No, at the end of the day, AI is never going to solve everything. It was never going to happen. This was never going to be reality. But maybe, just maybe, if we do our jobs right this time, we won't end up with that next time. So my prediction, if anyone's interested, right in line with this, guys. I think the years are probably a little bit optimistic, but I think the pattern holds. Anthropic's CEO said 90% would be written by AI this year and 100% by next year. I think within 2 or 3, most code will be written by people, and there's going to be a lot of slop that senior engineers are going to be cleaning up. So, all of this process we've covered tonight, this is going to be the ask of engineers, to know how to work with this new technology. We do that by doing what good engineers have always done. Explore, create, break, remake, and learn. Go learn how AI can elevate your work. Now go learn it.
All
Already
right.
hands up.
Question.
Testing. Okay, cool. So one of the challenges I have with using an approach that you take, I actually find a lot of value in it, so I'm glad someone else is talking about it. But one of the problems I have, especially with like open code, is I'll go through the plan, I'll tell it exactly what I'm looking for, how I want it done, this, and that, yada, yada, yada. And then it comes to the plan and then build phase, right? Mm-hmm. So I tell it to execute. Now all of a sudden it's writing its own JavaScript, it's writing its own code, it's doing all this. How do you manage to control that? Because I find it really frustrating that I tell it and I agree to the plan, and yet it goes off plan and it does things I don't want it to do, thus resulting in a lot of code to review.
Yes.
Are they even doing it correct? A lot of stuff needs to be looked at. So what's a good approach to control that?
For lack of a better way, looking at it during the process, not during review. And I know that sounds weird. Every LLM, every service, whether you're self-hosting or online hosting, your context windows are all going to be different based on the service you're using. But there is a known problem with these models that once they get to a certain percentage of their context window usage, quality falls off a scale. So trying to automate a whole bunch of dev work all in a row, stacking up all of your ducks in a row and then saying go, will 9 times out of 10 overwhelm its context. It's like a human. It'll get overwhelmed with too much information. And so if you can break those down, for me at least, when I broke everything down into micro steps, not just that, when I designed with micro steps and processes, small deliverables, small PRs, small code commits, that's what changed everything for me.
Hi, long-time listener, first-time caller. Just briefly, you mentioned a statistic about AI maturity being much more likely in companies that take a developer-focused approach, as in they still want the developer to be at the helm. They view the developers as the core aspect of whatever's going on. Mm-hmm. My main question is, what do you consider AI maturity to be?
Ooh, that's a good question. I don't know that I can put my finger on a specific metric, because I really think this is a combination of metrics. It's like, God, it's like trying to say, how much more efficient is having a computer going to make you? When everything was going from paper, nobody had any idea how much a computer was going to change everything. Nobody had any idea how much the electricity and the engine and the motor was going to change everything. Same thing's happening now. Maturity, in this case, looks like self-adoption. Individuals, users, the employees, feeling that empowerment to go find all of the little ways where they can operate the mundane work while still producing all of the quality they've been producing. That make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
Very well. Very good talk you have here. I do have one question about it. You gave an analogy of a company that makes axe heads somewhere in the Nordic countries, and presumably they don't make very many of them.
They actually make a ton.
Do they make many of them compared to the global number of them?
Probably not, but they make a quality craftsman object. And so you're right. They are not going to be your factory axe that you can go to Walmart and buy, but you are going to buy a quality, handcrafted axe head from them.
Yes.
And that's the big difference.
It's always true that quality will follow the people that are willing to go the extra mile, really think about their product, and do a good job, so to speak.
Yes.
It's literally in the name. But the money tends to follow the people who figure out how to do it at scale for really low cost. And I get the feeling, since people are going into engineering to make money, they might notice the industry going away from what might be ethically good and going towards what might be better, for lack of a better term, capitalism good. How do you feel like this squares with your message?
I'm trying to prepare a message for a different future, not for the one that we're currently headed to. I don't know if it'll get there, but I choose to remain optimistic.
Good for you.
Similar to his question, I'm looking for a job, and then I went to some fairs, job fairs, and I really heard some companies telling me, like, I asked, do you have an IT position open, software engineer, etc.? So, oh, no, actually, we are going all AI, and we are firing people. So for me, it's similar to this. They are changing the quality for low cost. So this is right now, happening right now, not in the future. So how would you answer this sentence of this person?
Well, I'd start off by telling those business owners that they were wrong, but I wish I had a better answer for this one, because it's, with my my first software company, I had people come to me all the time with a cheaper option in hand after I had given them a quote, after I had talked to them about work, and they'd come to me with a cheaper quote, and it was a team that they had never met with. It was oftentimes in another country, and not that that needs to be the barrier, but it often is an additional barrier to getting the quality that you need and getting your vision executed. And so I often had to tell these business owners that, yeah, if you want to go that route, come pay me double whenever they break your shit, when you're in a mess and you need somebody to clean it up. Anybody that wants to fire off that, oh, I'll just have AI do it, you say, well, come find me whenever you're ready to pay somebody to clean it up. I'll probably have to charge you double, but I'm more than happy to.
Sorry, but that last comment reminded me of a very relevant question. If we're expecting most developers to start using AI as a part of their coding process, or even just many developers, do you have any tips or tricks for working through someone else's generated slop?
Ooh. God, I don't know that it's gonna, at the end of the day, and this is the sad part, at the end of the day, it's not gonna be much different than joining any kind of company running legacy software. You're gonna walk into God knows what and be expected to do who knows what, and you're just kind of hoping for the best. And so I think my answer comes back to the same thing that I would have said even before AI. Figure out how to learn. Figure out how to learn with the tools that you've got. Figure out how to work them. And that's what's going to save your bacon whenever you're dealing with somebody else's mess. At least you have sound principles to fall back on. Yes?
So my first exposure to AI was to teach myself React very quickly.
Yeah.
And in the end, I got a product that worked. But to circle back to your point about validation, how do it's one thing to know in general as a software engineer, these are good practices and these are bad practices. How do I know if it's good React or bad React when I'm using it to learn?
This is a scary one, but you gotta just be willing to get that brutal feedback. Open sourcing your project if you can is a great way to do it. Share it on Reddit. God, if it looks anything like those emojis, somebody will tear it apart. If there's flaws in it, somebody will point them out. You just have to be willing to position yourself to receive that constructive feedback, and just know that some people are going to be douches about it. Anyone else? Oh, we got one online. Okay, who will be there to correct the mistakes that AI makes? I think we've all learned that at a certain point you get what you pay for. Good question. It was a mess. Okay, yeah. Well, yeah, at the end of the day, this is what kills companies. When you go down the wrong route, when you hedge all your bets in the wrong direction, and you're not prepared for that kind of hit when it comes, that's what kills companies. And so who's going to fix it? I think there's going to be a lot that doesn't get fixed. I think there's going to be Fortune 500 companies that probably shutter and close before all this is over, because they have left too big of a mess and nobody wants to deal with it anymore. Nope, another. If a spec can't make results more deterministic, what is the next step and trend towards more deterministic results? Is there more that we can be doing to deliver a more predictable outcome? I don't know that this is a bug as it is so much a feature, because if it was going to replicate what you wanted with perfect prediction, then it's just you doing it. AI is a lot more like working with a teammate. You're offloading some of that work, but you have to be willing to validate everything that they hand you, even more so. I don't know if that really answers it much, but more question, okay. Use GitHub Spec Kit. I am familiar with it, but I have not used it. I I know good things about it. I have my own processes, my own way of generating my specs, and that's just what works for me. But I have heard good things about GitHub's Spec Kit project. Yes?
I have another one. The process of humans improving themselves with the help of machines is as old as the concept of machines. And I really like that you've taken that angle here because it's exactly what people should be using AI for right now. What happens when we get to a situation where someone comes along and makes an AI that's just good enough at improving its own capabilities, say writing its own tests for certain processes, that you can sort of leaning tower your way towards something that works in general because every process just sees far enough to manage the things below it. Sort of a very tall tower of managerial AIs managing each other that hopefully should make something that works. If someone comes along with that, then aren't we all kind of hosed?
I'm going to go with no, but that's because, have you seen the meme where it says, not sure if I'm good at coding or just good at Google searching? At the end of the day, engineers have been doing this forever. There have always been people willing to take shortcuts in every career in every industry, and this is just a new form of shortcut. For every person that figures out a way to leaning tower their way up, there'll be people that figure out how to fly with it. It's like there will be a marked difference, and I think at that point it's just up to people to learn how to sift through what's what, just like it is now.
I suppose that's what I was trying to say. When AI learns how to fly, what do we do then?
I mean, if we hit AGI at some point, that's a whole different story, and this talk is a whole different, well, that's a, I don't have that answer. Yeah. I hear what you're saying, though. I think it does make everything harder. The better the con man gets, for lack of a better term, the harder it is going to be to distinguish what's quality and what's being propped up. Yes?
So my question is, what would you recommend for people that feel nervous or worried about their jobs or see Amazon lay off 15,000 people? Like, what would you tell those people in that moment, if you could?
I'm sorry for the world we live in. Because I get it. I get it. I get being in that position too. I think the best solutions to this is figuring out how to grow with it, figuring out how to grow into new mediums. I think, jobs have always come and gone. The old, before we had refrigerators and freezers, we had icemen who would literally deliver ice to our doorsteps. And every one of those people lost their jobs when we got the refrigerator. And I'm not saying that that's a good thing. Job loss is never a good thing. But there will always be more opportunity. And I think probably what we're going to see in the future is an explosion of creative opportunity, especially for people who are willing and able to learn technically with AI. Because that's where the real magic is, when we're providing all that creativity and AI is just providing that technical assist. So many good questions tonight, guys. Another one. Okay, hold on.
What would be a really good thing for people who are very new to the industry and don't know much to look out for when it comes to AI?
That's a good question. I mean, I'm a fan of Reddit, Stack Overflow. Go see what your peers are using. Listen to the discussion happening around it. Name drop tools that are probably even just starting with like a GitHub Copilot subscription, just as a place to practice and play, is a great way to start experimenting with this tech.
Thank you.
So, yes. Okay. Which one? The gray one? Okay. If AI is able to solve any problem thrown at it, doesn't matter how messy the code is. If voice is claiming we already are there, right, how does this change your outlook? Ooh. Does it matter how messy the code is if AI solves the problems? I mean, yes. At the end of the day, it will still matter. Mostly because this one, right? I mean, that's how we ended up where we're at right now, guys. That's how we ended up with that for our modern infrastructure. Is because too many corners got cut. It worked. It got 90% of the way there. Gosh, Twitter. Do you guys remember when Twitter used to have that blue ocean whale saying that it was offline far more often than you could actually see anything on there? Their tech stack was a mess. It was a disaster for years. And it's like they managed to make it through that. But for every Twitter, there's thousands of shuttered, closed company doors. I don't think that ignoring the slop will ever be the solution. I think that's just a ticking time bomb waiting to happen.
Okay.
I do believe, where is it? Oh, that left. Do you feel like AI is helpful with iOS development? This was actually my first experience with some agentic-led coding. Was in an Xcode project. It's lagging behind right now, and that's mostly Apple's fault. I hope they get their crap together. I know they just released a new MCP in Xcode, so hopefully, we'll see. But for now, it's a mixed bag of nuts.
You had mentioned that to go on Reddit or Google, whatever, to find like what your peers are using. But I would like you to elaborate a little further on that because, I mean, there's a lot of options out there, right? We have Claude, we have ChatGPT, we have Gemini, whatever the hell Twitter does or X does, Grok.
Yeah.
So, I mean, how do you determine what tool would necessarily be the best for the right job? I mean, I'm finding Gemini is like really useful for general purpose type discussions, but if I'm trying to switch between more research focused or more code focused, what would be the better options, and how do you find a provider to pay for the service instead of subscribing to say all of them or something, right?
How do you narrow that down? That's going to be a tricky one too, because you're right. The models there's some wild discrepancies between what certain frontier models can produce, what they're capable of. And I don't have a clean answer. For me, it came down to experimenting, figuring out what worked best for me, for my workflows. I use a lot of Claude's models. I stick with Opus and Sonnet. I'm still getting a lot of really great success out of that. But I'm already running a lot of local open source models as well too for little menial things. It's not doing anything big, but it's doing a lot of menial tasks for me.
Sorry, but what about the pricing though? I mean, is there like a service you can use that could like brings tokens together or something? I'm very unfamiliar with this. So.
Okay, yeah, there are some tools like Open Router that is like if you wanna be able to bring your own token, so to speak, but have a shared pool across multiple service providers, you can use something like Open Router. Most of the frontier model services like Claude, ChatGPT, they all have their own coding subscription platform too, like Anthropic's Claude Code or OpenAI's Codex. For me, these are great value at the price point. These are also the ones that if they go away, it won't be the end of the world for me because they're not automating any of my stuff. But I do use them for a lot of exploring and researching. One of those subscription-based models, a lot of your open source coding tools and organizational tools, research IDEs like Cherry Studio that I mentioned earlier, almost all of them will work with these different subscription-based services as well too. I've got ChatGPT's Copilot Plus subscription wired into a whole bunch of my tooling. You just don't abuse the rates and you won't have a problem. We good? One more, okay.
So with the advancement of AI rapidly just like ever increasing on itself, would you recommend somebody who's new to the scene to like incorporate AI into their workflow as soon as possible? Or when you have a better understanding of the basics, and if you don't, do you think that you are letting yourself fall behind?
It's a fair question. I think I'm picking up what you're saying, asking essentially, at what point should I start trying to work with AI if I'm new to the space in general? I'm only going to stand by this with some competency because I think it all depends on the person too. But I think if you're disciplined enough to be challenging all of your assumptions and self-aware enough to be really focused on what you're saying, I think it's okay to start using AI right away. I think using it to, God, what are the other developers using for this type of project? What are other people doing to do this? And if you can learn how, not just to ask it questions, but how to give it a connection to like a search tool, like a specific search in MCP like Travali, or something like Travali, blah, or something like that, where you're giving it a search engine that it can go talk to the internet with, then at least you're getting search results back from the internet and not just hallucinations from the model. And that's going to be the biggest trick, is that depending on what you ask it, depending on what tooling, what context you've given it, it could completely go off the rails and hallucinate reality. So especially in the beginning, validate everything it tells you outside of it. Wait till you've got a more refined palate to determine whether or not what it's feeding you tastes like bullshit. Yeah. Another? Now let's keep going.
It's more of a comment than a question, but I am a quality assurance engineer, and they are replacing all of us with automation as well. And so you get that, the AI that's generated the code, and then AI checks the code, and then the quality goes. And it's super frustrating because I was just laid off on Friday. But so that's why I'm here tonight. My daughter invited me to come, just because I do love being around developers. Like, you guys make my day. I just want to say that I found it really encouraging looking in startup companies, because they are finding the value of the human touch. In that sense. And so even though startup companies are risky in the sense that you don't know if they're going to be there in a year or not, because I've been in a startup before, and but they're fun, they're exciting, they're very supportive, and they offer you challenges that you just, because they're fast paced and stuff like that, that you don't know if you're ever going to hit. And I mean that's I love it, and I've found some good luck interviewing with them, and I hope that I have a position soon. But yeah, they spent a lot of money on some AI developers, and nobody ever looked at it, and they finally looked at it and did an audit, and it worked. It looked beautiful, but only about 30% of the code worked, and so now they're like, you know what, we need somebody to actually look at the user interface and interact with it and things like that. And so, and they should have had their developers actually interacting with it too. So hopefully your prediction comes true, because that was something I've been saying a lot, is that, pretty soon we're going to see all of these apps that just don't work. And the end user is going to notice it, and they're going to start complaining, and then we'll bring that quality back in the developer, the quality back in the QA, and we can work as a team again, because I love that relationship that flows and guides that whole process. Yeah. And so, yeah.
Well, for what it's worth, I don't think quality assurance is going anywhere. I think those professionals are still needed. I think they are likely going to shift the same way developers are. We're not going to be moving into a world where one super engineer does all the programming, all the project management, all of the quality assurance, and all the damn customer communication too. It's not going to happen. We are moving into a world where individuals are expected to perform at the top of their game. And the good news is you'll be able to charge like that too. So when they come back asking you for your job back, to give you your job back, and you've learned how to quality assurance test with AI, tell them you want double, triple. Negotiate your way back, because they're going to be the ones that need you at the end of the day.
All right, so Manny wants to know, so I'm going into cybersecurity, and I'm just wondering, could AI replace cybersecurity professionals?
Ooh. No, but I think for the same reasons that it's not going to replace most professionals, it's just going to downsize teams and the amount of those professionals. I think security engineers are still going to be using their toolkits. They'll still be sharing that tribal knowledge. They'll still be working that industry. They'll just be doing it with AI tools along with all of the rest of their pen test tools and their security tools. It's just going to be one person working more efficiently versus a whole team of people.
So I wanted to ask a human-based question
Okay.
in this discussion about AI. Obviously, like as far as latest trends go, this one is definitely like creating ripples in the pond. I want to say thank you to the woman who spoke up earlier and like just shared her experiences. This is a really scary time to be a developer, and like I feel amazed that I managed to get my first job in tech like a month ago, and I also feel really scared that like the next change in some C-level exec is going to say they can just automate my job. And it's like the ground has felt very uncertain right now, and the elephant that's standing in the room is how do we navigate this uncertainty? But the question I want to ask you is that your approach has constantly centered hope in the face of this change. And why do you feel like hope is the correct response to this?
Well, I'll say I think it helps that I've never had a corporate America job. Like I mean, when I was a teenager, I worked for Pizza Hut, McDonald's, but I've never worked in corporate America. I've worked in small business and startups my entire career. And so, I mean, I recognize that in some way that comes as a privilege because all of the uncertainty is like, meh, doesn't bother me any. This is change, and this is what happens. It happens in cycles. It's happened all throughout history. You know, things like unemployment, these aren't fun topics. Layoffs, that all, like, especially at a time like right now, but I think there's always hope on the horizon. There's always something better that comes from it. And I think our history and perseverance as a species shows that more than anything. I think whatever comes after this is going to be wonderful. I think we've just got a mess to deal with first.
Last call. Okay, you better clap a lot.